Hey everyone, this is Sandeep back with 100 Days of Coding JavaScript. Today's video, I'm going to talk about JavaScript events. So, events are things that happen in the system. So, I've opened this link, uh, by searching just JavaScript event on Google. And events are things that happen in the system you're programming, which the system tells you about so your code can react to them. For example, like when you click on a button. So if I go to this random password generator, right? What do we want actually? When I'm going to click on this generate button, I want to grab the values maybe, or I want to just write a logic so that I can generate the password based on length, include numbers and include special character values. Maybe I'm changing some number values here, right? So I want to save this number into some variable. When I'm clicking on this include number checkbox or include special character checkbox, I need to grab that value and save it into some variable. So all of these things, all of these actions which happen in your application are called events. So like here, given user clicks on a button of a web page, you might want to react to that action by displaying an information box. There are various type of events, like the examples are given here. The user selects, clicks or hover the cursor or a certain element. The user chooses a key on the keyboard. The user resizes or closes the browser window. A web page finishes loading. Form is submitted. Video is played, paused, and or ends, and error occurs. So these are all the different types of events, and you don't need to remember all of these events type. Based on the requirement, like I'll show you like how we write application, and while writing the application we get the idea, okay, I need this kind of event, so I'm going to search for it on Google, and then I can use that particular example in our application. So let's take the example here, right? So say suppose when I'm going to type something here like 8 or any value, or when I'm going to change the value of this length, so I need to search for the event related to input change. So I can go and search for the event input change event, something like that. And maybe if you can put JavaScript at the start, that would help a lot. Okay. So JavaScript input change event, and you'll get the example for that. So you see that we have something called a change event available to us, which is related to input change. Now, the next thing is the important thing is we need to understand this function called add event listener function. So to add an event or to listen for an event, we need to add that event on that particular object or on that particular element. So say suppose when I click on this generate button, I want to listen for the click event. So to do that, we need to add that event using the add event listener function. So I can say button.add event listener, then the name of the event and what's going to happen when I'm going to click on that event. Right? So this is the logic. It's like in case of our generate button, when I'm going to click, so I'm going to add a click event here. Then I'll write a callback function, a function which will generate the password based on the values, based on the selected form values, I would say here. Okay. So first of all, let's start writing some of the events on these input elements, I would say, right? And we're going to set some values, like what value user had set for the length, whether user has selected include numbers or not, includes symbols or not, or special characters or not. So to add an event, first of all, we need that DOM element, right? So I'll minimize this. So for this length, I have already this length input, right? So I'm going to add the event listener for that using add event listener function. And I'm going to listen for the change event. So when I'm going to change the value of this length by clicking on these buttons, or maybe I'm entering some value here, I want to listen for that event, right? The change event. So I have written that change, and I'm going to write a callback function here, which is an arrow function. And I know we didn't talk about arrow function, so let's not use it for now. Let's use a normal function, just not to confuse you. Okay, so this is a normal function called the anonymous function, because I haven't given the name to this function. That's why we call this function as anonymous function. And I'm just going to do the console.log for now. Let's see if we are able to listen to this event or not. So I'll say change. and let's see if it is working. So open the console. I'll put my console down, and maybe if I see that when I'm changing the value, even if I type something here, and our form is getting refreshed, because of I can't press the enter actually. So for now, I'm going to use this only. So you see that the values are getting changed, and I'm able to see the function. So this is the event, and this is the action on that event. And I can see the console.log change in the console window. So now I can grab this value from this length input, right? And to grab that value, we have something called, so I'm going to maximize this. Whenever we call any event, we get something called an event object. So let's talk about event object. So sometimes inside an event handler function, you'll see a parameter specified with a name such as event. So like here, this is my event handler function. We see E. Now what is this E? This is called the event object. And it is automatically passed to event handlers to provide extra features and information. So it's a good practice, to pass that event object. Using that event object, we can grab. So that event object is a name value pair. It's an object which has some properties and maybe methods also. Right? So we can use those properties and methods for our advantage. So I'm going to grab that event object here, EVT, and let me log that event object here, EVT, save. And let's go back to our application. Now, if I click, see that I'm getting that event object, and that event object has some properties and some methods. So let me put it on the right hand side. See that it got so many properties, a name value pair, right? And maybe some of the properties we are interested in. You can see the source element, which is the input, right? The input whose value I'm changing here, right? Target is also input. So most of the time we use this target. So say suppose I want to grab this value. How can I grab that? I can go inside a target and let's search for a value property. And if I have a value here inside this, we scroll down. So many things are there, right? I don't see anything related to value here. These are all the events actually. Okay, let's try to console.log actually. So I'm not able to find it. Event dot value. Let's try. But it is inside the target. So target is nothing but input element, and let's see if we can get the value. So I'll go back to my application and try to increment this value. See that we're getting the value, the current value here, right? 4, 5. So we need to save this value somewhere, because we will need this value later on to write the generate password logic. So I'll go back and I'll create some variables here like const length, or let's be specific. Password length is equals to, initially maybe I'll keep the value 0, and now I'm going to grab that value and save it here. So password length is equals to event dot target dot value. Let's listen for some more events. So say suppose I want to grab the value of this include number checkbox, right? So if I click on that, so can we search for the checkbox event? So I'll search for JavaScript checkbox. This is how I usually do checkbox checked event. Do we have that event? And probably we have that. Let's try to click. Let's click on this Stack Overflow link. I have a checkbox in the form. So you don't need to remember all the events. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So checkbox has an event called change event, and I can get the checked value, something like this. So let's try to use this. So I'll come back to my. So let's target this number checkbox. I'm going to add the event listener, and we are going to listen for which event? change. It has the change event. And I'll write the anonymous function. We'll grab the event object and let's see what we get when I console.log. Event.target.checked. Do we get the checked value? So the application, I'm going to click, see that true, false, true, false. When it is checked, we are getting true, and when it is unchecked, we're getting the false value. Same we need to do for special characters also, but before that, I'm going to save it into a variable. So I'm creating some of the variables here, like number, or I'll call it include number, include numbers, something like this, and I'll keep it false. Then I'm going to change it here. Include numbers is equals to event dot target dot check. Cool. The next one is symbol checkbox, right? So I'm going to grab that element dot add event listener. Again, we'll listen for the change event and have a callback function. And inside that callback function, I'll create a variable const include symbols. Initially, I'll keep that value as false and we'll save it. We'll get the event object. I'm not going to use arrow function here. EVT, and I'll say EVT event dot target dot value, not value, checked. Okay. So I'm grabbing all of my cannot read property null, add event listener, where I'm getting this error on index.js line number 20. So line number 20, symbol checkbox dot add event listener. We don't have a symbol checkbox. Cannot read property null, reading add event listener. So we don't have symbol checkbox. Probably let me check. Symbol checkbox. I'm targeting symbols input. Is it symbols input? Yes. Okay. Document.queries. Okay, I forgot to add a dot here. Okay. It should go away now. So if I click here, assignment to constant variable, right? I have created all of these are constant variable. They should be let, because you can't change the const value later on. So let's keep it let. Now I can change these values and those values are getting saved actually. Now I have to listen for a couple of more events like generate event, and on click of a generate button, I need to add a logic to generate the password, and for copy, I need to write a logic to copy the password, right? So let's add those events also. So I'm going to target my generate button for that, add event listener, and we'll listen for a click event here. Let's add the callback function, anonymous function. And for now, I'm just going to do the console.log. I'll say generate password here. We're going to write that logic soon. Then we need to have the copy button dot add event listener. Again, we'll listen for the click event function. And I'll just copy this console.log from here. Copy password logic goes here. Cool. I'm going to save, go back to my application. If I click on generate, see that we are getting some error here because our form is getting refreshed. So instead of writing the add event listener on the generate button or on the copy button, right, I'm going to add a listener on the form itself. So am I already targeting the form here? No, I'm not targeting the form. So let's target the form, and I'll tell you one more example how you can listen for the form submit event. So let's target the form, which is document dot query selector. And what's the name of my form? I need to check. Closed it. It's password form. So I'm going to copy and paste it here. Okay. So I can listen for form events also, like my form is, so I'm going to remove this for now. Instead of this form dot add event listener. And there is this event called submit event, which we can listen. When the form is going to get submitted, we're going to get event object here. And I'll just write something called event dot prevent default. Now, what is, as I said, right, this event object has properties and methods. So what prevent default does, it stops the default behavior of form of the page refresh when I'm submitting the form. And I'm just going to do the console.log here, where I'll just write submit. Okay, let's try now. So say suppose I click on generate now, see that a form is not getting refreshed. So either I can write a logic on generate button also, but I'm going to use my form submit event, and there I'm going to write the password generation logic. Okay, so I hope you understood the JavaScript events. So we can grab our elements and we can use the add event listener function, then the name of the event and the callback function. This is the practice. This is the standard we are going to follow for events in all our JavaScript project mostly. Right. So I think this is it. This is about events. I'm going to stop here. I'll see you in the next video of this series. Until then, you take care. Goodbye. And thanks for watching the video.